Hey YouTube, Porsche 944S, we've got a bit of a issue with a leaking fuel return line, and it's leaking around about there where I think it's gone rusty and probably chafed on this rubber securing block. So the run of this pipe, so it's an 8mm steel pipe, goes up into the rubber fuel supply hoses, and then it's one piece around this kind of corner under the entire body. It's a bit of a corner there, through these clips. Sorry about the shaky camera work. Up over the torsion bar here, and that's going to be hard to access. Then up here somewhere where it connects to a flexible rubber hose, connects to the flexible rubber hose there, which is kind of grotty, and that goes over to the fuel tank, which you can see just there. So that goes in at the top. I'm not sure what I'm going to do, because it's going to be a pain, if not impossible, to replace this line in its entirety without removing the torsion bar and effectively the whole rear suspension unit. So we're going to assess my options and see what we're going to do. Right. Okay, Porsche supply a replacement fuel line that goes from the front rubber pipe around the tricky corner there to somewhere around here on the car, and then there's a rear piece that joins up. But I suspect with the trickiness around that suspension unit, it's going to be impossible to fit. So what I'm thinking of doing is cutting the steel line here, removing the fitting on the end of this pipe and just cutting it off straight, then use a compression fitting to join the two together. I was considering joining to the back with a nylon fuel line like modern cars use, but there were so many fittings to choose from, I just couldn't find the right one. So we're going for a compression fit. Okay, so we're going to need to work safe. So the first thing to do is to get the car up on axle stands, front and rear, because we're going to need to access this section in the middle. Excuse all the rust on the seals, that's going to be done soon, I promise. And then we're going to want to be undoing these hose retainers. Now, they're pretty well seized on. The Allen key to fit that just turns in the hole, so I think we need to improvise somewhat. I think I'm going to try at least to use one of these kind of reverse thread type affairs. I'll put that in the gripping thing and see how we get on. This is threading itself in, or is it just chewing itself up? Okay, I think that's just spinning. Okay, so using the kind of reverse thread extractor tool wasn't any good, but what I've done is taken a Torx style Allen key and using my hammer, so it it wouldn't push into that slot at all, but I hammered it in, and lo and behold, it's turning quite easily, I suppose, once you've broken the initial resistance. Maybe it was hitting it with the hammer and loosened it. We'll see. We'll give the next one a bit of a whack anyway, but that's coming out quite nicely now. It's a funny fit in, and I've not seen these for sale. I think they may have been superseded by an entirely nylon part, and you can see that this is a steel clip that it's pretty much turned to dust, and equally manky rubber thing behind, brush out some of this crap. So what we want to do is give ourselves enough wiggle room so that we can pull this pipe down and use, well, A, see if there's enough sound metal to do anything about it, but 2, use our little pipe cutting tool to cut it off nice and square, I don't know, somewhere around here, clean it up, and then use the compression fitting to join it to the sound pipe. Obviously make sure you don't cut too much, because we'll need to measure where the new pipe terminates. I feel it's around here, but we will obviously double and triple check before cutting anything, because these Porsche genuine parts are rather expensive, so I don't want to go cutting it up to the wrong size. Okay, I'll catch you in a bit. Okay, we've got a couple of clips off. What we're going to need to do now is disconnect the fuel return hose in the engine bay. So the nut is a 14mm and the female end is a 17, so bear with me while I undo these two. We'll probably lose a little bit of fuel, but I've drained the tank, so it shouldn't be gushing all over the place. So once you've cracked the joint with the 2 spanners, one working against the other, it's actually quite easy to remove this nut. Now I've had these pipes off a few times, so yours might be a little bit more seized in. This is where we'd expect to see a huge rush of fuel if we're going to, so we'll get my heads back. That's a joke, I can smell fuel. You could drain the lines by running the pump with the check screw and done, but there was no need. Okay, so that is off, no huge rush of fuel. I mean, we've got a fuel leak in this pipe, so in all likelihood it self-drained. So that's free. And we can manipulate that pipe. You can see the fuel dripping. Okay, interestingly, it's trapped behind this pipe, which I think is that the brake line, or is that the clutch? Oh, that's the brake line. So we might need to do something creative there. Okay, so it's kind of become a bit apparent that we're not going to be able to take this out in one piece. But, I mean, it runs the length of the car, and we don't want to play around with anything at the back. I wanted to pull this down and then cut. I wanted to pull this down and then cut it just in the one place, but that's not going to be possible. So, interesting. You can see it's very wet there. That's definitely where our leak's coming from. But I think what we're going to do is snip that off, just so we can manipulate it out using the precision bolt proppers. I'm going to do it on the failure, just so you never know which bits we're going to reuse. So that's cut. That will drop out. Pull over, whatever. And there is our. Now we've got some flex to work with down the back. Okay, so off camera we've put the new pipe into position so we could wiggle it around behind this brake pipe, because it, you know, it's only a short length now. Put it into its proper mounting holes, and I've checked it's in the right place up there. So underneath we've got the existing pipe here hanging down, and the new pipe running in the channel where it should be. So what we're going to do is figure out a nice place around here somewhere where there's a sound bit of metal to cut it, and then cut it just right here as well. I'd kind of prefer to cut it more this way, because if I cut this pipe too short, we're in for a big job. Whereas if the worst came to the worst, we could buy another one of these replacement parts. So let's identify a place. We'll clean it up with the emery cloth, then use the pipe cutting tool to cut this one. Then we'll mark this. I'll need to figure out the required gap that the compression fitting requires, and we'll cut both pipes and try and fit it. So welcome back to underneath the car. I've been cleaning off the original fuel pipe that we're going to connect to with some emery cloth, looking for a nice sound bit with as few pits and things as like that as possible. So I'm going to cut this pipe off right about there, where there's some nice clean metal either side. Then we'll be able to measure the new pipe and cut it accordingly. Okay, so that cut very nicely. So now the next thing to do is to mark the new pipe where we're going to cut that. Now, we don't want them to butt right up to each other, these two pipes, because the fitting has a kind of lip inside, so it won't allow the two pipes to touch. And that lip I've measured is pretty much the thickness of the hex ring around it. So if I measure this, I'll mark the black pipe with some nail varnish, and then I'll be able to remove that pipe and cut that off the car. So I'll come back to you when that's done. Cool, so the pipe's back off the car. I've marked where I want to cut with some white nail varnish, and I actually want to cut between those two blobs because I couldn't place a blob accurately enough, so I was able to accurately put a gap between two blobs. Right, let's try and cut this pipe. I'm going to presumably have to remove the paint from the pipe afterwards, but I'm going to cut it with the paint on. So line the blade up. Nice light pressure just to get the cut going. Just right. A little tighten. brace the cutter with your other hand when you tighten the knob, because if you just twist the knob, you're going to put a twisting force on the body of the tool, and that probably or could knock it offline. Now, I'm in two minds whether to deburr these pipes. I probably won't do the one that's remaining on the car because I won't be able to clean any swarf back out. And the burr will kind of sit on the shoulder of the inside of the compression fitting anyway, so I'm not too worried. I think the kind of compressed bit you get when you cut a pipe like this in a high flow system, like in a water tube, it can cause cavitation behind the joint, but I think we'll be alright with this fuel line, especially with it being steel. I suppose it's more of an issue with a softer metal like copper. So the foam cut out whilst we were doing that, but suffice to say the pipe was cut off quite nicely, so what I'm going to do is tidy up the end of that with the emery cloth and see if it all fits together again. So we cleaned up the end of that pipe with emery cloth. It's actually really hard to get it off. It took quite a long time, so I clamped the rest of the pipe in the vise and probably took about 10 minutes. So enough of the black kind of plasticky shield is off, because the olive in this compression fitting when you want to clamp it onto the steel. So we've taken enough off that sits on enough bare metal. Of course, when we put it together, we'll put kind of the bit with the hex on it, then the olive, then the body, and pull it all together. Sorry, I'm doing this one-handed. Do it up nice and tight. Not that I'm doing that now. We'll do that on the car, so see you in a bit. So dear viewer, this is the situation we find ourselves in. We've got the old pipe and the new section both next to each other. We're going to try and fit this compression joint. So I'll see what I can do with one hand. Otherwise I might need to put the phone down and come back to you. So I'm just unscrewing various bits. Okay, so here's our compression thing. Let's pull that out a bit. Sorry. So, just checking it all fits. Very nice. Put it back apart, because I need to put on the kind of locking collar, I suppose you'd call it, and an olive to that side. And put this on. And then do the same on the other side. Okay, collar and olive. And because we've got enough sort of flex in the system, we can manipulate those back together and put everything in place. Then, well, obviously just doing this with my fingers, but I'll get a spanner. So I'll get my spanner and I'll come back to you when I've tightened that up. But that is essentially the repair. So that's it with the nuts tightened. Looks exactly the same as it did before. Now, you don't want to murder these up because you'll deform, I think, the olive and the pipe underneath. You just want to do them just tight enough. So what I do is do them a bit loose, if anything, check for soundness, and then nip them up a little bit if need be. So what we're going to do now is connect the fuel pump up, run a bit of fuel through the line, and see if we've got a leak or if it's dry. Okay, what we're actually going to do is, okay, don't forget to join the end of your new pipe back up to the rubber hose. I'll just do it finger tight and then give it the final tweak with my spanner. Nice to see that the fitting is the same size and I don't need to undo all the work I've done. So we've done that one up. We're going to go across to the fuse box where we've taken out the DME relay, and we're going to use our handy jumper to jump the fuel pump. So the fuel pump's now going, I don't know if you can hear it. I'm going to look at our joint there. Fine. And then I'm going to go and see the all important fit, wherever it's gone, which we will also find is dry. So as far as I'm concerned, that is fixed. Okay, we're back. So since we've been gone, put the wheel arch liners back on. And you can see the repair is looking kind of neat. I checked, it's been about half an hour for leaks, and there were none. I've sprayed, it looks really untidy. Just a bit of black hammerite onto the exposed steel pipe to prevent that from any corrosion getting into that. I started it up and it was all good. Checked for leaks, absolutely nothing. These clips have completely disintegrated what held those, so I'll get some of those to replace what fell apart in my hand. But apart from that, that is a job done. Okay, catch you next time.